Today is Manchester United versus Chelsea Day at Old Trafford, the day that Garnacho's probably been waiting for all summer. And I'm going to say one thing: losing, I won't be happy about. But losing and Garnacho scoring, I really won't be happy about. Of all the things Manchester United today, of all the things you can do, the worst thing you can do is let Garnacho score. Because he's going to either go and sit on the advertising boards and celebrate, or he's going to be like, be humble, but actually, like, respect celebration, but out of sarcasm. We cannot let Alejandro Garnacho score today because my head will be hot. So that you've got one job, Manchester United. It's not even about winning or losing. Please win, or at least get a draw. But do not let Garnacho score the winner. Do not let Garnacho score a goal that lets Chelsea win. That is your job. And we're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about the starting 11 for that game. But as we're talking about Garnacho, some funny stories came out of Garnacho about players in the Manchester United squad disliking him, finding him immature. I was talking about this the other day with the boys on What the Devil, and we were saying, like, it just felt like none of the players really liked Garnacho, like the older players, because when a player leaves Man United, loads of people post on social media like farewell, bye-bye. No one really did that for Garnacho. Like, only the youngsters apparently liked Garnacho. A lot of the older players didn't, and we got some reports on that as well, which was quite interesting. Ruben Amorim's come out with more comments saying he's not changing, and he speaks about United and how he wants to be here and how he wants to succeed. JJ Gabriel scoring again in the under-18s. What a baller. And yes, our starting 11 versus Chelsea. So, hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to your quick 10-minute roundup ahead of the Chelsea game, where we're going to dive into all the latest news, transfer news, and more. So this was an article that came out by Chris Wheeler and Nathan Salt, two well-informed journalists in the United space. Garnacho's teammates didn't rate him as highly as he rated himself, and felt he didn't pass the ball enough. We always said that. We always said, oh, Doru's made a really good run and Garnacho wouldn't pass the ball. We all know that. And I think sometimes it's good to be a little bit selfish as a player, and there was elements of Garnacho's selfishness that I think is good to have, but and many times he was wasteful. I always felt with Garnacho, if he could improve his decision-making and his finishing, and his ability to create separation, he would be a really good player. And I felt that his decision-making actually did improve as the season went on. I don't know if anyone else thought he got less selfish as the season went on. I thought he ended all right, actually. But he didn't pass the ball loads. He was known for being selfish, and that doesn't surprise me. And both Erik ten Hag and Amorim were frustrated by his lack of discipline, especially in tracking back. I've always felt, personally, that Garnacho did track back and he did work really hard, but he worked really hard going forwards. I think sometimes he did lose his man at the back post. We saw that in his first game for Chelsea as he came off the pitch. I wouldn't say he was at fault for the goal Chelsea conceded, but he could have maybe done better there. I think that Garnacho's work rate was always good, but he did rate himself very highly. To come out and say what he did after the Europa League final, it was not acceptable. I didn't want Garnacho to be sold. I didn't want Garnacho to be sold for 40 million because I do actually rate Garnacho. But the way he came out and said what he said after the Europa League final was incredibly disrespectful to the manager, incredibly disrespectful to Mason Mount. And you could see Mason Mount probably sitting there thinking, F this guy. You could probably see someone like Casemiro looking at it going, F this guy, who does he think he is? A lot of Man United players would have seen Garnacho's comments and thought, who does he think he is? Let's be honest, him sticking his fingers up at people, it is toxic. But one of the interesting things that Chris Wheeler and Nathan Salt even mentioned on top of this was about when we won the FA Cup, Garnacho invited I Show Speed to Wembley. So Manchester United's FA Cup celebrations were crashed by I Show Speed because Garnacho invited him, and apparently one former United player said, in our day, the dressing room would have sorted him out. Apparently some of the older players were not happy with Garnacho inviting I Show Speed, happy with Garnacho, and there has obviously been speculation and stuff, rumours that a lot of the older players at United weren't Garnacho's biggest fan. They didn't like Garnacho, or they didn't like Garnacho doing this or that. I would assume it'd be a Casemiro, a Mason Mount, a Harry Maguire, and Matthias de Ligt. I would assume it'd be those kind of players. But, there's always been a feeling that Garnacho thought he was better than this and that, and people thought what he did to Amorim was incredibly disrespectful, and it was. So that doesn't surprise me that there was people in the Manchester United dressing room that thinks in their day Garnacho would have been sorted out. He did have an ego. I've always said this with Garnacho. I like him as a player. And people might go, what do you mean you like him as a player? I like him as a player. I think as a fan base, we underrated him as a player. I think there's a good player in Garnacho. I think he'll be a success for Chelsea. Chelsea spent 55 million on Gittins and wouldn't spend more than 40 million on Garnacho. I think we got mugged off by Chelsea. But what I don't like about Garnacho was the ego, was the attitude. I think Garnacho's a good player. But it's the ego. You don't want to deal with the ego. And that's obviously what Man United fans did not like either. But yeah, let's hope Garnacho doesn't score today, and let's get into the other news stories. Also, I'm aware I look very rough. I'm very hungover. I went out for my birthday yesterday, so I'm a bit dead today. So a win would be even better, because I do not want to be doing a match reaction if we lose. I tell you that now. We're continuing on. Obviously, as mentioned yesterday, Sir Ratcliffe and Ruben Amorim had meetings. Obviously, Sir Ratcliffe wants to get to the bottom of why things aren't working at Manchester United, and Ruben Amorim was obviously asked about these meetings, what was discussed, people think, could they be discussing his future, how many games he's got left, all of that. He was asked if Sir Ratcliffe has persuaded him to try and change his tactics, in which Ruben Amorim responded, No, not once. Not even the Pope. Not even the Pope. It will not change. This is my job. This is my responsibility. This is my life. So Ruben Amorim is saying and making it very clear he will not change his tactics. Now, Ruben Amorim's tactics work in Portugal. Ruben Amorim's tactics worked with the players that he had at Sporting. But we have a 31-game sample size to show that Ruben Amorim's tactics have not been working at Manchester United with these current set of players. Now, some of it is down to Ineos not getting Ruben Amorim the set of players he needs to make it work. Some of it is down to Ruben Amorim being too stubborn and unable to adapt. You look at the amount of times Klopp's adapted, Pep's adapted, and maybe Ruben Amorim should adapt this or that. It's a multitude of things, but I do think if Ruben Amorim keeps doing the same thing over and over again, which is not working, he's going to get himself sacked. And I do think he has to look at little adaptations or little changes. Ruben Amorim even said, I will fight with all my strength to pursue my dream. I want to coach this club. A single match can change everything. We've seen it in Sir Alex Ferguson. I fight every day for the next match, of course. And look, Ruben Amorim comes across well in interviews most of the time. And Ruben Amorim comes across like a nice and likeable guy. And I want Ruben Amorim to succeed. I would love Ruben Amorim to succeed at Manchester United. I think he's come across as a normal, likeable guy. I made a joke on Twitter that he's fighting with all his strength to get his 12 million compensation package, and I forgot that people on Twitter can't take a joke. So when I'm saying he's fighting with all his strength to get 12 million compensation package, everyone's going mental now. It was a bit of a joke, but I like that he's fighting, and I like that he wants to make it work. I just think if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and hoping it will work, it's not going to work. I think he needs to look at some solutions and look at some changes, because I don't want to go through this cycle of sacking managers. I'm fed up with this sacking manager cycles. There's not a manager on the market right now that I would be confident is the guy for Man United, but I am at a point right now that I think there's other managers out there that could be doing better with these players than Ruben Amorim. I mean, Ruben Amorim has a 25% win rate. Ruben Amorim is bottom of the Premier League for points per game since he's come in the door. So there is managers out there I think that would be doing a much better job than Ruben Amorim right now, but there isn't a manager out there that I'm like, he is the guy. And there's a part of me that hopes it works under Amorim, because I'm fed up with this sacking manager cycle. Continuing on, Manchester United's under-18s are actually playing as we speak. The game's only recently kicked off, but JJ Gabriel put United 1-0 up with a really good dink over the keeper after a ball from Ibrahimov. And JJ Gabriel's one to watch. He's one that's expected to get opportunities in pre-season and maybe get moments next season. Shea Lacey's another one to watch for this season, been involved in training. But I also want to talk about our starting 11 ahead of the Chelsea game. There's obviously reports that Cunha and Mount are both back fit for the game. Would you start them? I don't want to take any risks. I think if Cunha is fit, you start him, but I don't want to take any risks, if I'm going to be totally honest. But I would like to see Sesko, Bruno and Bumo front three. I'd like to see Maino and Casemiro in the pivot, Dorgu left wing back, Ahmad right wing back. I would have Maz right centre back, Euro left centre back, De Ligt central centre back, and I'd like to see Lemens in goal. Anyway, people, thank you very much for watching today's 10-minute roundup. I'm going to wrap up the show here in actually 9 minutes. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know your score predictions ahead of the Chelsea game. I think Chelsea are going to win 2-1, but we have a good record against Chelsea. We have a good record at home against Chelsea. So I'm going to go 1-0 Man United. 1-0 Man United. I don't think Chelsea have been at their best lately. Let's see. Thank you for watching. Bye.